Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 March Classic, Marching Ahead Together. My name is Brendan Byrne, District Director for District 1 in Essex and Chair of the Grain Farmers of Ontario. This is our first virtual March Classic. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. There's no real substitute for being together in person, and I want to recognize the time you're taking away from your farm to be here with us today to show your support. The one thing that I've always respected is the willingness of our farmer members to show up. I hope that you and your families are well and that we can continue to pull together and to heal our communities and work towards overcoming this pandemic. The past year has presented us with a lot of change, very different change than we could ever expected. We had to shift the way we do business. We had to deal with a whole new kind of isolation and uncertainty. We had to learn new technologies. We had to keep fighting to have our voices heard without being together or in front of politicians, industry groups, and more. And we did it. We kept going. We kept growing. We kept feeding the world. So I mean it when I say congratulations to farmers everywhere. Your resilience and dedication to your operations hasn't gone unnoticed. As many of you know, I became chair just over a month ago. I'm still quite humbled by the support and belief that the Grain Farmers of Ontario Board has shown me. I am pleased to introduce the 2021 Grain Farmers of Ontario Board of Directors. I myself am the board member for District 1. District 2 is Mark Houston. District 3, Emery Housekstra. District 4, Steve Twinestra. District 5, Vice Chair Scott Persall. District 6, Jeff Barlow. District 7, Kevin Armstrong. District 8, Keith Black. District 9, Executive Member Josh Borson. District 10, Henry Van Ankem. District 11, Leo Blydor. District 12, Vice Chair Jeff Harrison. District 13, Lloyd Crow. District 14, Marcus Hurl. District 15, Chuck Amiot. Thank you, gentlemen, for your dedication and leadership. Over the past year, this board has been agile. We pivoted to online formats and accomplished targets despite the uncertainty in the industry. This board continually shows up on your behalf, time and again. I would also like to thank the 135 other elected delegates who take an active role in helping this organization succeed. Your input continues to help guide us at every step. This year, our board, delegates, and members were also asked to answer calls and be routed to political offices with our message, and you came through. The board will continue to show up on your behalf, but again, as the March Classic theme suggests, we can do so much more together. So if a call to action comes and we ask you for your help, we need you to stand up, to show up, and support the initiatives. This board is committed to building opportunities for our farmer members to grow successful businesses. Whether you have 10 acres or 10,000 acres, if you grow grain in this province, your opinion matters to us. We are watching this industry and working with the Grain Farmers of Ontario team to act on your behalf. I would be remiss if I didn't single out our team and extend a thank you to them as well. During turbulent times with the office closed, they found ways to connect and to continue to be powerful advocates on our behalf. And I also thank them for the work done to bring this event to life. We see the concerning changes and shifts in policies and regulations that impact your ability to grow grain. We're taking action to ensure that these new regulations do not work against farmers. From the carbon tax, to crop production tools, to risk management, to changing government regulations, we will never stop working on our farmer members' behalf. Rest assured that it is a priority of mine and our board that we be at the table to advocate on your behalf and to bring grain farmers' perspective to any of these discussions. A couple of areas of personal importance to me are continuing the good and vital work we are doing on farmer mental wellness. This is an area that has closely impacted me, and I understand too well the need to have frank, open discussions to find the best resources for our farmer members. I've lost a friend, and I don't want you to go through that pain. And if you are in pain, I want you to know there's a way through and that you can reach out and there's help waiting. Equality, diversity, and inclusion are important topics and deserve attention. When I was with my Advanced Agricultural Leadership Program class, we had the opportunity, while in Texas, to go to the 6th Floor Museum. The museum chronicles the assassination and legacy of John F. Kennedy. A quote that stuck with me later while reading about his life was, "Our task is not to fix blame for the past, but to fix the course for the future." I am committed to guiding grain farmers of Ontario to help lead the industry to ensure that diverse voices and experiences are heard, respected, and engaged. I know this is a big undertaking, and I will need your help. I am here first to listen, and then to figure out how we can help. I've engaged in some conversations already to gain perspective. I know we are stronger when we include all voices and when we are willing to learn from others and think differently than we ever have before. If you're watching this right now, know that you belong here. Your opinion matters, and I want to hear how I can help. We want to accurately reflect the diversity of our membership and amplify all voices. Before I hand the podium over, I would like to take a moment to thank Marcus Hurl, the outgoing chair of the Grain Farmers of Ontario. Marcus dedicated 3 years of his life as chair, and I know he made personal and professional sacrifices to fulfill his duties. He led us through some of the hardest times many of our farmer members have known. Remember Dawn in 2018? I know District 1 does. Seems like 10 years ago. What about the CN rail strike? Marcus went to bat time and again for our farmer members with government at all levels. He shone a light on our issues with media, and he was a constant leader for the industry as a whole. He represented every district in this province, and I am also committed to representing all districts in this province. He is leaving some pretty big shoes to fill, and with your support and the support of the board, I look forward to working every day to continue the strong legacy of leadership. Thank you, Marcus. Again, thank you for spending some of your time with us over the next 2 days. I hope that you enjoy the content, maybe learn something, and that you take back to your operation, that you can take back to your operations. All the very best to you and your families. Stay safe, be well. Now I'd like to turn things over to Crosby Devitt, the CEO of Grain Farmers of Ontario.
Well, thank you, Brendan, and congratulations on your election as our new chair. I'm really looking forward to working with you more closely to guide this organization. Well, a virtual March Classic, who would have thought this would be our world a year ago? Certainly not me. So thank you for coming out and supporting us over the next couple days. I would also like to echo Brendan's remarks to Marcus and thank him for his leadership as our outgoing chair. Marcus, it was a pleasure working with you. 2021 is going to be a year with more change, more opportunity, and more challenges. In that light, I want to speak to the March Classic theme this year, marching ahead together. Marching ahead can sound a bit military, but we are constantly battling to ensure that farmers and the reality of farming is considered when policies that affect us are introduced. But beyond the need to push to have a voice in important conversations, marching ahead means that we keep going. In the face of difficulty, whether that's in the form of government that doesn't get it, or the weather or disease or markets that make us question everything we think we know about grain prices, we keep going. We keep growing, it's what we do, and it's the right thing to do. Marching ahead together is truly a celebration of our dedication as farmers and that we will be our best and achieve our goals by working together. I am a proud farmer and I am proud to work for farmer members and to lead a team that is dedicated to putting grain farmers in Ontario first. I believe our new vision statement captures our outlook for the future very well. Thriving farms, responsible production, trusted grain farmers. Now, I would like to introduce Grain Farmers of Ontario Vice Chair, Scott Persall. Scott is the Grain Farmers of Ontario District Director for District 5 in Elgin and Norfolk counties, and he will be your MC this afternoon.
Thank you, Crosby. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see so many people joining us online today. We certainly have a full show for you today and tomorrow, and in a few moments, I will introduce a panel to talk about some of the issues and work being done this year. Tonight, we have a celebration planned during our reception sponsored by CCAN. The talented folks at Spirits Canada will join us for some cocktail making. The 2 cocktail recipes can be found in the agenda section of our March Classic webpage. And John Charles, a musician and comedian, will entertain us. Tomorrow, we will see a Canadian-focused U.S. Farm Report panel discussing the latest market trends and hear from experts in politics, consumer and food trends, and science communications. It's going to be a great couple of days. In this virtual world, we have a few housekeeping items for you. For any of the sessions, we will have a Q&A open. You will see a Q&A button on the Zoom webinar screen. That's where you can enter questions, and they will be read by the MC and addressed by the speakers who will all join us live. If you have any technical difficulties, I ask that you email them to marchclassic@gfo.ca. There are a lot of opportunities to win great prizes at the March Classic this year. Enter our giveaway passport contest by collecting 10 code words from exhibitors' booths in halls A and B. You'll need to ask exhibitors their code words through the live chat function. Once you have collected all 10 words, visit one of the 2 Grain Farmers of Ontario booths and live chat with our staff to let them know your codes and enter to win. Winners will be randomly chosen and contacted on March 24th. Prizes include a home office technology setup from Grain Farmers of Ontario, the chance to win one of 3 $500 gift cards to use on parts, service, or equipment at your local John Deere dealership, thanks to the John Deere Dealers of Ontario. Lastly, there is a chance to win a one-of-a-kind Grain Farmers of Ontario branded mini fridge filled with locally brewed beverages. In the networking lounge, we have opportunities for attendees to win more great prizes. Every 30 minutes during the hours of operation, we'll randomly choose an attendee in the lounge to win Grain Farmers of Ontario swag. This afternoon, we have Kathy Dibble is our networking lounge winner. Thanks to Kathy Dibble. Also in the lounge, we will have a running leaderboard of points awarded to attendees as they participate in the lounge. Join a meeting, fill out a quiz, or view the profile of fellow networking lounge attendees to win the top 5 networkers. We'll win prizes from Grain Farmers of Ontario. Did you notice the green tractors in the lobby this afternoon? Find 10 of those tractors in the lobby and in exhibit hall A and B to win a Yeti cooler, Yeti water bottle, and a $200 gift card to Canadian Tire. Click on the tractors as you find them. We will also be monitoring Twitter for hashtag March Classic mentions. We will draw several names from those actively tweeting about the show over the next 2 days, so start tweeting. The March Classic is an opportunity for Grain Farmers of Ontario to give a snapshot of the year before and to look ahead to the next year. This year, I had the chance to speak with CEO Crosby Devitt, Chair Brendan Byrne, and Vice President of Strategic Development, Paul Hoekstra, to reflect on the 2020 and discuss what the future might hold. Please join me in watching this panel discussion, which will be followed by a live Q&A.
gentlemen, to start, I am going to ask each of you to give a brief introduction and share a personal highlight from the year. Crosby, let's start with you.
Hi, Scott. It's great to be here today and on the panel. And I'd like to introduce myself, Crosby Devitt. I'm the CEO of Grain Farmers of Ontario, and I've been in the role for about a year now. And it's been a wild year. Certainly one with a lot of change, but the global pandemic has certainly provided the need to shift and change with the times. And one of the things that I would say as a highlight over the last year at Grain Farmers is that we took on a renewal and updating of our strategic plan. And that's a vitally important roadmap for our organization, and certainly something that we're now turning into the action phase. We put more emphasis on working with members and engaging all of our members across the organization and across the province. And really look forward to digging in and turning that plan into action over the next year.
Thank you, Crosby. Let's hear from Brendan now.
Thanks, Scott. If you're a delegate, chances are you've seen me around some of the previous Grain Farmers of Ontario meetings and whatnot, but my name is Brendan Byrne. I am the newly elected chair as of February for the Grain Farmers of Ontario. It's an honor bestowed upon me by our board of directors. I live just outside of the town of Essex. If you weren't familiar with where I'm at, it's probably about 20 minutes from the Windsor-Detroit border. So I live on the farm with my wife and 2 teenage kids. I've been involved with the Grain Farmers of Ontario since the inception. We had a couple strong voices from Essex that were instrumental in putting the organization together. Leo Gilbo and Dave Whaley both kind of mentored me when I was younger coming on the boards. I've been on the board for 6 years, the executive for 3, and as I said, I'm the newly elected chair of the Grain Farmers of Ontario. So looking forward to dig in on issues on your behalf. A highlight for me, I guess, would just be seeing how agile our board has been and how we've worked through all these different issues, even though remotely, to make sure that we didn't miss a beat in terms of trying to come up with solutions for our membership and to provide work on your behalf. So I think that's as good as any place to start for me, Scott. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. Now, Paul.
Thanks, Scott, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Paul Hoekstra, Vice President of Strategic Development. That team includes communications, market development, research, and agronomy. A little bit about me. I grew up in a small town in Eastern Ontario. I've spent my entire career in agriculture, whether it be from government to consulting to most recently the private sector. When I think back to this past year, for me, my personal highlight is actually joining the Grain Farmers of Ontario. I'm very new to the organization. I joined in September, and being a part of this exciting, dynamic organization is what I consider to be my highlight of the year. It's a very well-respected organization. It's something I'm looking forward to continuing its efforts in the future. Also on a personal highlight, much like Brendan, just how everybody's really changed their ways of working, changed their realities in a very efficient way, new ways of working, all with keeping safe and everybody else's safety in mind as well. That's been a real highlight for me to see how everybody's, pulled together this past year.
Thank you, Paul. Now on to the next question. As a provincial organization, we were proud to be recognized as a top agricultural influencer in the federal government. What led to that recognition?
I think it's an honor bestowed upon us just by the work that is continually done behind the scenes. And we don't often see it exposed that way, but I know our Marcus Hurl, our previous chairman, worked tirelessly at having these meetings on behalf of the membership. And I've tried to hit the ground running. I know as soon as I got the chair responsibilities, the meeting calendar started to fill up, and it's a testament to our staff with the incredible relationships they have with government to influence and to have those discussions. I know we also had some different social campaigning, some advertisements that people would have seen along the way. And then we've also worked on building coalitions and bringing together some of our Eastern Canadian partners, the Quebec grain producers, the Atlantic Grains Council. And it's also reflected in what our delegates have asked for. In the past year, or probably past 2 years, they've asked for more resources and time and effort put into our government relations. And I think that they see that reflected, and it was reflected nicely on the organization to have that recognition.
On the government relations side, as Brendan mentioned, it's been a huge area of focus. And if we look provincially, there's been an enormous amount of work and some significant progress made. Back about a year ago, it seems like a long time ago, the provincial government made changes to the pesticide regulations that really continue to have protection over the environment and the use of pesticides, but reduced a lot of red tape, which was very positive for grain farmers in this province. Going through to the summertime, in July, we saw an announcement by the provincial government of an additional $50 million to be put into the risk management program. And this is something that GFO has been advocating for a long time. And it was really encouraging to see that timely addition to the program. And so as we look now, we continue to build on that momentum and are seeking further changes and improvements to the risk management program, including more resources into that vital program for Ontario farmers.
Our relationship with many levels of government is vital in our advocacy efforts on behalf of our farmers. One advocacy issue on the front burner right now is the carbon tax. What are we planning?
Thanks, Scott. That's a great question, and it's certainly very topical and very front of mind for grain farmers of Ontario and all of its farmer members. It goes without saying that climate change and meeting Canada's international commitments are likely to remain a key part of the government's mandate for the foreseeable future. The increased carbon tax is a real significant concern and challenge for our farmers who don't have the ability to pass these costs on to the consumer, unlike other sectors and what they can do. So our efforts are to continue to engage with the government to exempt these direct costs to farmers, like the carbon tax on fuel used in grain drying on the farm, as well as looking at opportunities to expand that to commercial grain drying as well. Second to that is also to look for ways to highlight with the government the ways that the carbon tax will increase costs to farmers, other costs to farmers as well, such as crop inputs and the like. So we have to find a way to take a big picture look at this and then prioritize our ask and get the government to look at ways to change the carbon tax to the benefit of farmers.
And I think if I could add, Paul, we heard the membership loud and clear previously, like during last year, but also at these January district meetings that we just had. And the question was brought up multiple times. The cost being borne by farmers was significant on their operations for drying grain. And we want to make sure that everybody knows that this is a top of mind piece for us going forward. It's something that we look at. The grain drying, say, piece is maybe a shorter term, but the overall push on the environmental standards and carbon tax is coming our way. And our goal at the Grain Farmers of Ontario is to be at any table where carbon tax is being discussed that might affect our membership. So we want to be there when decisions are made, be able to put forth evidence as to what you're doing on your farms on a day-to-day basis that helps the environment, and make sure that your voice is heard at that table. So you can rest assured we'll be working as hard as we can on behalf of our membership with any of these carbon pieces.
Just picking up on that point too, that farmers are environmentalists and stewards of the land, and I think every farmer across the province knows that and sees that. The challenge when we see new environmental policy is finding a way for farmers to fit into there and make a positive contribution that doesn't compromise their business environment. And that's really what we're trying to do is farmers have a huge opportunity to be part of the solution without adding extra costs. And certainly we're bringing that message loud and clear and continuing to build on it.
All right, thank you. As an organization, we have to know where to prioritize our investments we make on our members' behalf. That's why we added Dawn research investments to our research priorities. What kind of momentum do we have in that area?
Yeah, certainly Dawn and Fusarium is a key research priority for the organization, among many others as well. But it's a long-term priority. It's not something you change overnight, but there's been huge progress made in the last number of years. I remember when I joined GFO's predecessor organization, the Ontario Wheat Board, in 2005. Fusarium was a major priority, and over that 16 years since then, there's been major progress. If you look at wheat right now, We've got much better varieties for resistance. We've got better fungicides, and we've been able to integrate the management to really get a handle on the disease in the wheat crop, which is hugely significant for the future of wheat in this province.
Yeah, it's a good point, Crosby. I think DON is an incredibly complex issue. There is no magic bullet to fix it, and it's certainly not going to fix itself. Since the 2018 incident, GFO, in collaboration with Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and the University of Guelph and other stakeholders, of looking at ways we can tackle this problem and looking at ways we can tackle this problem by multiple areas. So whether that be genetics, to the environment, to harvest and storage, all looking at ways of targeting DON, reducing its level. And there's been some really great and significant headway in the past couple of years. One good example of this sort of collaborative approach and the success of it is this DON working group that we had this past year with over 50 industry and government stakeholders that have come together to really develop a coordinated approach. So we're all working on the same direction for viable improvements in certain key areas, such as in-season DON forecasting, effective and standardized sampling at elevators, as well as increasing and improving screening procedures for corn hybrids as well. So really taking that multi-sector, multifaceted approach to a very complex issue and trying to make sure we're all working together. Just as well, I think the DON issue is just a great example of the way for us to always be thinking ahead and looking for ways to innovate for tomorrow. And one good example we're going to talk more about in this coming year is the YEN, which is the Yield Enhancement Network for wheat. And that's just another good example of pulling people together to find ways to improve the efficiencies on our fields through science, through technology, and through collaboration.
And one thing there that we also want to make sure everybody knows is when the DON issue first presented itself, it was only in a handful of pockets or very rare instances and areas, one of which was my own in Essex in our backyard. And when we would travel to do the January meetings, we'd get questions on dedicating a lot of time to something that maybe wasn't an issue for all of the province. And then we saw that spike where it kind of hit in multiple regions and all across Ontario. And that's an example of when we first saw the issue, we started to work on it then. So any small issues that might feel small or that might feel large in your district, make sure you know that you can bring them forward, and we'll start working on them today for a solution so that if something does come to a neighboring area 3-4 years from now, we've already put in some work on that issue. We've already started to get a handle on it, and it's made us and it can make us a stronger organization that way and give us some backing to solve some issues on your farms.
Yeah, when we look at issues like DON or any other production issues, we know that as long as we'll be farming, we'll be facing those types of challenges. And one of the key things that's sets Ontario apart, I'd say, and is something that we look to in the future is having that research capacity, and that includes well-qualified researchers, professors, research associates, grad students with the facilities they need to do the job. And we don't know exactly what the next challenge will be, but if we have good people in our University of Guelph, OMAFRA, Agriculture Canada research labs, we know that we're ready to respond and work on those problems on our behalf. And so that's a key area that we're looking at, and we have looked at over the years, is as researchers start to retire and change, how are we bringing the next generation of researchers into the grain industry in this province?
Switching to look at international markets, how has COVID impacted trade, and how are we overcoming these impacts?
I think I can touch on that at the beginning here. COVID brought with it a list of uncertainty that we really never had to look through before and try to sort through and see what was going to be an issue, how long we're going to be in this for. And then obviously we were seeing across North America, maybe a more protectionism type piece from the administration in the US, some trade issues in China. And when you combine all of those things, it just creates for a very uncertain time in a global economy. And I think at the time, the best way to do it was just to wade through it as we went, try to find solutions to problems that presented themselves, but then also start to forward think a little bit as to how we can maybe make sure that we're on top of things with our trade partners so that if there are disruptions in the system, we're able to work through them collectively and collaboratively. And I think that's kind of where I lied on that piece, was just us trying to make sure that we saw any issues that might present themselves. I know we worked on some of the supply chain pieces because, say, in Essex, it was the first time that I ever went to a grocery store and there was no bread, there was no eggs, the meat was picked over, and I didn't know if that was going to continue for just that day or whether it was going to be an ongoing struggle. So I think the best thing to do is be proactive in some of these pieces as we see signals across the world economy, and try to be as active as we can in problem solving and coming up with solutions.
Thanks, Brendan. I think building on that too, I think, with COVID, the world stopped. And I think right at the top, all three of us mentioned that we had, as an organization, had to do things differently. Everybody had to do things differently. And certainly, we couldn't take a year to not engage our customers, not to engage the markets. And so, looking at market development, looking at future opportunities, we didn't stop. We just sort of reprioritized. And certainly, the change in our approach had to change. We weren't doing face-to-face, trade missions. Travel was not possible for us or for our customers or for our key export markets. And so we had to move all of our, these face-to-face key meetings we would normally have with important export markets across the world into this virtual realm. And what I'm really proud to say is I don't feel we missed a beat. While we do miss those one-on-one and opportunities, those relationship building exercises, and the chance to really hear directly from your customers in a formal or informal setting, that those face-to-face events provide, we were able to expand our reach to more countries and have more interactions. We were able to also bring in experts that we weren't able to do before necessarily, such as those that work in the grains analytical testing laboratory, to really directly engage with our customers, to showcase the expertise that GFO brings to the table and how we support our market. It's also provided us an opportunity to really work closer with some of our partners, some of our industry associations like Cereals Canada or Soy Canada, to work collectively with them to deliver our virtual missions and to share a common voice at these forums with our customers.
Well, we are here at the first ever virtual March Classic. Events and public outreach were very different this year. How did we stay connected to the consumers?
That's a great question. I really want my hats off to the entire communication team for putting on such an amazing event this week, but also just over the past year. The whole organization's had to be able to be comfortable with shifting constantly, being comfortable with the unknowns and the ever-changing reality of the new world we were living in and working in. Consumers like us, they were experiencing a lot of uncertainty as well, uncertain, unclear, distracted with the world. And one thing I think we should be really proud of it with grain farmers is, we focused our digital content to make sure our messaging was always clear and easily accessible. We advertised our messaging and our events and information sharing to our farmer members across a variety of platforms, just to make sure we're always, out there talking to those that would be interested in our message and making sure our farmer members are up to speed with what was going on. I think as well, we also took the opportunity to really take a step back and work with those that have an audience as well with our consumers, like dietitians and others, and working with them and their platforms to really find more and create more broadcast opportunities for our grain messaging. We also sought opportunities to work with others in the sector to help amplify our messaging. I mentioned before some of our industry partners and their own initiatives. Being part of those projects has really been great opportunity for us to talk about the great work that GFO does, but more importantly, the great product that our farmer members create.
There's probably no other area of the organization that had to pivot and adapt very quickly than our communications side. When we typically have dozens of events that involve the general public that we are at every year, and of course, essentially none of those face-to-face events happen. But the ability to go digital and the rapid adoption and adapting that consumers made, but also the organization and the educational system too, was absolutely incredible. So for example, a big program that we typically run is in classroom events where students can grow a grain plant or a soybean plant and learn about the growth stages. Well, obviously they can't do that in classrooms. So we were able to pivot and work with providing good digital resources for teachers that were obviously looking for good material that they could deliver in a different format. And so a good example of how things have come together, and some of those things we've learned will likely remain. We know 2021 won't be a normal year either. Hopefully we'll get back to some events later in the year. But some of these digital events and assets that we're delivering are really important and will probably continue down the road. We're also looking at launching a new kind of major public outreach program that helps link the farm to the consumer that's eating the food that we produce, and from the consumer perspective. And it's going to be pretty exciting and something we should all be looking for coming from your organization.
And I think the fact that we're even doing this event is a huge deal. I remember last year when we were shortly before the event was to happen and having to make that tough decision to cancel the event and not knowing whether we were maybe jumping forward into something that was going to be over shortly or what to do. And the fact that we're able to pivot and be agile and adapt to the technologies, do our board meetings online, and do something like this where consumers can see what we're up to. I know myself, like when Crosby's talking about those resources that went out to classrooms, I also had the opportunity to do a virtual Q&A with some students during the fall. And we did 4 of those sessions that were recorded. They were able to send in questions from each individual classroom. And we connected with almost 700 students just doing that. And it was right before you were heading out to harvest at the time, the bean crop, but you couldn't quite go too early in the morning. So it worked out. But some really great questions from kids around the province that wanted to know what was involved in agriculture, and anything from, so what do you do during the winter? Or, okay, what's your biggest tractor? To, so how quickly does the seed pop out of the ground in the spring? And we were able to have those conversations where, as before, it might have been hard to do. And so we've used a lot of those digital spaces to continue our advocacy, to continue to talk to consumers, classrooms, really anybody that had an interest in speaking with brains, we were able to do it. And at times, maybe it is a little easier to walk out of the kitchen into your office, turn on the computer and connect with somebody than it is to make that trip during a peak season. And all those little touch points add up at the end of the day. And I think our communication staff did a tremendous job in making those connections for staff and for directors to connect with consumers one-on-one or in a class setting and get that information and those pieces out.
As we navigate through these challenging times, farmer mental wellness continues to be at the forefront of the industry. What is the role for GFO in that?
Well, I think anybody that knows me, Scott, knows that this has been an issue of importance for myself. What a lot of people maybe don't know is it didn't necessarily come natural or easy. It just came with a situation I was put into. So I guess GFO's place is to make sure that we are at the table and having discussion as to what's needed for our farmer members. It's easy to just say that they need to be resilient or that we are resilient or to champion your own mental health, but it's totally different to have to do it for yourself or for a family member. I know I participated even last week in a mental health roundtable with the Minister of Agriculture, and we had a lot of input in there. Dr. Andrea Jones-Bitton is launching the second phase of a study on farmer health, mental health and stresses. So there's pieces like that we continue to be involved with. And I know that we have a long way to go. And sometimes when people are talking, they wonder why you're using so many resources towards some of these pieces. And my end game is just so that people don't have to learn about mental health the same way that I did. They don't have to lose a friend or family member. They don't have to try to navigate the system or feel like they're alone when some of these pieces are going on with their family members. And I just want it to be a place where there's open dialogue if our farmers need it, and they know where to reach out for help. And us being a part of that discussion there's a much broader agricultural discussion happening, but I think any way that we can help our farmer members, their families, their communities, that we have an obligation to do so. And the mental health and wellness certainly fits into that sphere.
And we've seen a massive shift in thinking, you know, across the general public, but also within the agriculture community on mental health and wellness and its importance, but also the resources, as Brendan mentioned. There's been a lot of new resources created that are customized for farmers, and GFOs, you know, playing a small part in that, but a big part of our effort in that is to try to help put the right resources in front of people and make them available. And we know something like mental health and wellness is very individual, and there's a whole range of resource needs. And so the best thing we can do is help you know, encourage that the right resources and experts are available, but help farmers make it easy to get to those as well. And so certainly we've got a number of different specific initiatives that we're part of, but also helping to ensure people can find the right thing for them in the right time.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for your lively conversation. It's clear to me that there's a lot of work going on at Grain Farmers of Ontario and a lot of plans for the future.
I hope everyone enjoyed that. We have Crosby, Brendan, and Paul here to answer any questions you may have. Again, please use the Q&A feature in the platform to ask questions. I see we have an initial question already. So this is a two-part question. What other initiatives was Grain Farmers of Ontario involved in this year? And what was our contributions to Feed Ontario and other charitable organizations?
In terms of initiatives, I think at the beginning, it was just trying to adapt to the new normal, figure out ways to get messaging out and advocate on our members' behalf. As far as the second piece, asking about the Feed Ontario, we saw a need right off the bat in a lot of the food banks and some of the messaging that was going on. So we put forth the $100,000 donation to Feed Ontario, and we actually saw several of our other districts throughout the year stepping up with contributions as well to local initiatives to help feed people. And within our grants for our districts, we've been able to accomplish some of those pieces, and I think other districts have plans to do the same in this next coming year. Whatever we can do to help, we certainly want to be out there doing that.
We mentioned in the pre-recorded video that we have been changing our outreach to the public to a digital means. And I did want to mention our Good in Every Grain campaign. And that's really our public facing brand. And there's been a huge change to expanding the digital side of that on social media, but also on our website and blogs, as well as a lot of videos straight from the farm that are available to all members of grain farmers, but also to the members of the general public.
Okay, thank you. I have another question here for the panel. How did the district meetings go? And are there plans to do more virtual shows in the future?
I think that a lot of people would hope that we'd be through virtual shows and back to in person, but I think there's certainly room for both. I know some of our members, it's harder to get out to some of the district meetings in January, or some weather conditions pop up. So I think that if there was a way to have a hybrid and involve more of our members, that would be great. I know personally for me, I wasn't sure how they would go, but I was presenting and you still felt connected to the districts. You were getting questions, good questions from the people that were listening to the content. And I think everybody left with essentially the same update as they might have got in person. We missed those personal touches, but I think from an information perspective, they were brought up to speed. And the elections, I thought, went really well in the districts that had them very smooth. And that's a kudos to our communication staff behind the scenes that took care of that.
All right. I have one more question here. What are the next steps in the clean fuel regulations?
Great. Thanks for the question. Just to recap for people, the submission deadline for comments has passed. It was March the 3rd, and the team worked extremely hard over the last number of months to collect our position and to provide comments back to the government, as well as proposals as to how to make the regulations work. We have a number of months until the regulations become formalized. That happens in the fall of this year. So between now and then, we'll be working with our industry partners, from other farming organizations to elevators to the biofuel sector, to advocate for our message. And I'm really pleased to say that throughout this all, we have a united front. We have a common message that we've all rallied around. So we're really united in our advocacy. So between now and then, we'll be working with these partners to advocate for that message with the federal government, whether that be with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to Environment Canada, who has the lead on the file. As well, Grain Farmers of Ontario is taking the leadership position and working with our provincial colleagues on this matter as well. It's extremely important to have the provincial government, the Agriculture and Agri-Food, OMAFRA here in Ontario, as well as Environment in Ontario as well, to advocate on our behalf as well with their federal counterparts. So lots of moving parts, but we're very hopeful for a very positive resolution on this file come the fall.
And maybe just to add to Paul's comments on the clean fuel regulation, that proposed regulation from the federal government lays out the government's plans on how they're going to regulate the carbon intensity of fuels going forward. And when we look at the fuel mix in Ontario and across Canada, we certainly see corn-based ethanol as a critical part of that mix. We know from the science says and all of the work that we've done throughout our industry that ethanol reduces greenhouse gas emissions, it reduces tailpipe emissions and pollution. It has done for a couple decades now in this province. And so as we look forward, we're going to be pushing hard and advocating for the fact that ethanol continues to play a critical role in our gasoline mix in this province.
Okay, thank you, Paul Crosby. I have another question here. It's kind of got three questions in one. I'll read it out. What is your opinion of the Responsible Grain Code of Practice? Will it help build public trust and gain retail export opportunities? Is there any downside, or what are the next steps?
Maybe I'll just start. I think, the first thing I'd like to say is that we talk a lot about public trust, but there's also the trust in between the farmer that's growing the grain and our direct customer. And we have customers from around the world for Ontario grain. And increasingly what we're seeing is interest in the sustainability and how that grain was grown. And so at Grain Farmers of Ontario, we've been involved in a number of initiatives over the last several years to benchmark the sustainability of grain, but also provide assurance should that customer be looking for that. And there's things like the Sustainable Agriculture Platform or Initiative, the Field to Market Canada program, and there's others out there as well. Responsible Grain is a newer initiative that has been launched in Canada, and there was a draft program laid out for consultation, and Grain Farmers put some comments into that. The way it's being positioned as a voluntary code of practice for farmers across the country. And so I think it still remains to be seen whether it will be picked up by our customers and whether it'll create value, but certainly when we went through the components of that, the good news is that grain farmers across this province are doing a lot of good things, and it might just be a matter of demonstrating what we're doing on behalf of the government or behalf of the environment, but also following regulations, following the rules, all those types of things, and demonstrating that to our customers.
I do think one of the important pieces in there as well is it providing value? Is it hoping, or is it going to help open markets? I've grown IP soybeans for a number of years, and you get used to some of these pieces that they're asked for and kind of documentation. So I think it's a next step in that. People were willing to do the work on that. If it was opening up a market, it was providing a premium, some service to the grower. So I hope that that's the case in this. It's not just that we're doing it and doing additional work and not being rewarded for it. But I have a hope that going forward, some additional markets that maybe are looking for that certainty of where things come from, where they're grown, how they were grown, opening up some of those markets would be a key for me in having it go forward and being able to promote that as such.
Yeah, I mean, just one quick build to that is I think what I think the Responsible Grain Initiative has shown is the need for us to have these conversations on sustainability and the need for Grain Farmers of Ontario to play that leadership role, whether it be voluntary programs like Responsible Grain that the Canadian Roundtable of Sustainable Crops has put forward and continues to refine and have more engagement on in the future, or other programs that our customers are looking for. This is going to be an area that we'll be focusing heavily on in the future. It's an area that our customers and the public are looking for us to be able to tell our story, and we have a great story to tell.
All right, I have another question here for you. A farmer from the GTA area asks, very few people in the GTA understand farming. How would GFO address this issue?
I think one thing right off the bat is the new kind of public trust campaign that our communications team is putting together. I think that from as long as I've been farming, that's always been a question. How do you communicate with cities to make sure they understand where their food is coming from? And from our perspective, we have the safest food supply in the world. We're good to go that way. We want to convey that message to cities, but we also want to be partners with them. We're growing crops that we want them to purchase from us. So we want them to feel safe doing so. And part of that is even in the campaign is maybe not necessarily directing it as a farmer to farmer kind of thing, is representing different groups that are buying our grains and eating food made with our grains and showing them that we're working with them as much as we want them to buy our grains or the products that are produced, but also kind of show them that we're acting in manners that are responsible. And going forward, I think we'll do a little bit more of that. It's been hard without having shows and stuff like that we would have maybe traditionally been right in downtown, or some pop-up opportunities for marketing. But I think once those open up, we'll be able to add those to an existing digital piece that we're working on, and it'll be a good start for sure.
Yeah, I think just on that, something that we've learned as an industry and as an organization over the many years of working with the public is that us as grain farmers and as Grain Farmers of Ontario, we're thinking about grain every day. We know its importance. We're working with it. We're thinking about it. The general public isn't thinking about grain every day, but they are thinking about food, and that's something that we've put some work into. Is you've got to start with what's of interest to the customer, and they're thinking about food. And when you start talking about food and what's important to them in food, then you can have the conversation about grain and how it connects and how it's an important ingredient in many of the foods that we eat every day as Canadians. And so there's been a lot of work done in that regard through the Good in Every Grain program that I mentioned, but we've got a lot more to come, and we'll be launching a new program coming up later on this spring.
All right, thanks. I think we have time for one more question. The current federal government seems to be disconnected with agriculture and its need for long-term health. What is GFO doing to make certain that the governing party gets educated?
Well, I think for the first part is being at the table when some of these decisions are happening, when some of these conversations are happening, contacting our MPs and even MPPs to make sure they understand what's going on at a farm level. It's harder and harder because there is a bigger disconnect, but there's a lot of regulation that's kind of coming our way and will continue to in the next few years. And if we're on the outside looking in, we're waiting for other people to shape our industry. And I think the big part for me is being at the table to lend that perspective straight from the farm to make sure they understand how it affects farm families. And going forward, that'll be a key to me, is just being at the table to help shape those regulations as they come. And that'll be, I guess, the starting point for me in this next little bit.
Yeah, just, farmers are environmentalists and looking after the environment every day. And I think the best thing that we can do is, it might be difficult in these times, but if you can get a politician or a candidate or a member of the government onto your farm, onto a farm, show them around, explain all of the good things that are happening and how diligent farmers are at using resources these days, it goes a long way. It's one thing to be able to explain it on a Zoom call, but as soon as things open up, we're going to be opening up the doors and providing opportunities for those in government and those that wish to form government to get onto farms as much as they can.
Great. And I think if I may add to that, I think one thing as well is we're only as effective as the passion and the voice of our members. So when there's an action call that comes out, it's incredibly powerful and meaningful when our members respond. So whether it be those callings, direct calls to ministers or to politicians on issues that matter to our membership, your voice matters 100%. So please, when that call comes, please take it.
Right. Well, thank you, Brendan, Crosby, and Paul, for taking time to answer those questions. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. We need to send a special thank you to our sponsors. We could not produce the March Classic without the generous support of our industry. Thank you to our platinum sponsors, Bear Traits, DeKalb, Greenfield Global, CCAN, Syngenta. Thank you also to our gold sponsors, Farm Credit Canada, BASF Canada, Ingredion Canada, John Deere Dealers of Ontario, and Pioneer. Thank you to our silver sponsors, Agricor, MNP, Pride Seeds, Roberts Farm Equipment, New Holland, Spirits Canada, University of Guelph's Ontario Agriculture College Dean's Office, and the Department of Plant Agriculture. And thank you to our March Classic supporters, Canadian Grain Commission, BMO Agriculture and Agribusiness, Enlist Soybeans, Mazix, and Solio. I'd like to invite everyone to check out our exhibitors. There are 2 exhibit halls to visit. Don't forget to collect your code words to enter our giveaway passport contest. Thanks to everyone who was tweeting online about our Grain Farmers of Ontario panel. And we have another winner. The Twitter winner is Amanda Broadhagen. She will receive a Grain Farmers of Ontario prize pack for their tweets during our afternoon sessions. We will see you back here at 5 p.m. for our reception with cocktail making, music, laughs, and more. We will announce more prize winners then, so don't forget to check back in.